Hello, hello. Here's Aage again coming to you from the World Paranormal Show on 44 platforms around the world. And we are also transmitting on the Conscious Awakening Network. You should go over there and check them. Go to YouTube to Conscious Awakening Network. They got 50 some different shows over there on all of the stuff that we want to know about. So go check it out on YouTube. And if you are watching on YouTube right now, this is the place to be because this is the only place we can monitor the chat room. If you ask questions, put them in capital letters so we can see them quicker, and then we will maybe answer your questions so you can participate in the show. Anyway, we are going to talk about Saint Germain tonight. Who was he? What do we think we know about him? We think we know something. Why? It's because so many people have talked about him and they all seem to talk about the same things about him. So since so many people talk about the same thing, this got to be true, right? Maybe. And then there are people channeling Saint Germain. By the time you're done listening to this, you're going to wonder, is he still alive? Can he be channeled if he is still alive? Now, that's a question I'm going to leave you with at the end because you may have to figure it out for yourself. Also, people saying he never existed because there's no real evidence for it. Oh, yeah, there is. All kinds of writings. There's a painting of him, and back in those days, they didn't have cameras. But there is pictures of him in 1972. Then they have cameras. So anyway, there's lots of prominent people that have written about having interactions with him. And it's verified over the centuries that he was seen all over Europe for a couple of 100 years or more. He was always well dressed. He had diamonds and precious stones on all fingers and also on his belt buckle and his shoes. For hundreds of years, he always looked like he was 45 years old. Now, over the years, he used different names. One of them was Major Frazier, Major Fraser. Also called by people, mostly by other people, it was called Der Wundermann. That's the Wonder Man in English. He was also used the name Francis Tudor and also Cartopilus. Now, also in 1972, a guy in Paris, France, he claimed to be Saint Germain. That guy was a magician, and he had many of the same abilities. He turned any metal into gold. He revived dead animals from the dead. He spoke many languages. He had much of the same knowledge as we know about other accounts of Saint Germain. And he had the knowledge of history that he could talk about like he was there. And then he disappeared, which is a common trait by Saint Germain. I have my own story It's a very mysterious story, involves a telephone call from France, and I'll tell you that at the end because I'm still wondering about that one, but I got a sneaky suspicion and I'll tell you about it. But first, in the 1800s, he was very busy. He was seen all over Europe. He was seen in India. He was at The Hague attempting to broker a peace treaty between Prussia, which was in Russian territory, and Austria. He was also seen in Russia, in Holland, in England, and they're all personal accounts by people, credible people that wrote in their diaries and their memoirs and letters between themselves and things that could prove that they had interaction with him. Mesmer, Anton Mesmer, he wrote about having met him, and he said, Saint Germain had a great understanding of how the mind worked. Mesmer also said that Saint Germain was the one who taught him hypnosis, is what we call it. Back then it was called mesmerism. Marie Antoinette, the Queen of France, she wrote in her diary that Comte de Saint Germain, that's Count Saint Germain, had warned both Louis, her husband, Louis XVI, and her about the coming revolution. And that was written several years before the revolution actually happened. And when it did happen, Saint Germain was observed being at the execution of Marie Antoinette. He knew it was going to happen. Saint Germain was fluent in all European languages, plus Arabic, Sanskrit, and almost everything that we can think of in world history. He was seen in two places also at the same time. Another written account, a verifiable written account by him, was from World War I. In 1914, Saint Germain was captured by Bavarian soldiers, German soldiers. They wrote in the report, he spoke all European languages and told them that the war would end in 1918. They didn't believe him because they were so bad, they didn't see how it could end. The Count also told them that a tyrant would rise to power in Germany and lead them into another world, or should I say war, in 1939 and be defeated. Germany would be defeated 6 years later. That happened. How did he know? That's in the military report. There is an interesting letter at the National Archives in London written by Casanova while he was at the King's Palace of Versailles to a member of the British royalty. You know, we all know who Casanova was. He was an Italian flounder, womanizer, and lover, and just kind of traveled around, mooched off people, and kept them happy, whatever. There's all kinds of stories about him. Now, in that report at the British Archives, it reads, from Casanova, the king is fascinated by this Comte de Saint Germain, and the king set him up with his own laboratory for his experiments at the castle. I also saw him change a pocket coin into gold. Saint Germain did his work during the daytime and then partying with the guests at the court at night. That was his schedule. But no one ever saw him eat. Occasionally, he had a cup of tea, herbal tea. Well, I guess back then it was all herbal tea. When asked about why he did not eat, he said, "It is not necessary to eat." Okay, that sounds pretty crazy, doesn't it? Well, some people do not eat. They consume sunlight and prana and live on it. There's energy in sunlight. You ask anybody with solar panels on their roof if there is energy in sunlight. The body, once the sunlight enters the eye, goes back in to the brain and in the body have a way to convert that light into energy. There is actually some scientific experiments that prove that. So here's a novelty for you researchers out there. Google Hira Ratan Manik. Hira Ratan Manik. That was a guy from India. He did not eat. And he proved it. Some 20 years ago, NASA did an experiment with him. They observed him 24/7 around the clock for 411 days. And he ate no food. He just drank water, did his intellectual work, and looked at the sun for an hour every day. But he did not do it every day because if it was cloudy, he couldn't look at the sun. And he still needed no food. Now, Nori and I also interviewed a lady from Australia, Jasmuheen. Jasmuheen has not eaten any food for about 20 years. And then there is Elatom El Amin. We interviewed him too. Go to Broadcast Team Alpha on YouTube, scroll down into the shows, you find the shows, listen to them. They explain how it works. And guess what? You can do it. And think about it though. These people are doing this. Here's my thought. If these people are doing this now in our time, why could not Saint Germain have figured out how to do that back then? Of course he could. But it makes you think. And he claimed that he had found the philosopher's stone. So, philosopher's stone, what is that? Well, it is what David Hudson rediscovered in the 1980s and 1990s. It's called the white powdered gold. That's when you take gold, you put it in an arc oven, you heat it up to 5,300 degrees for 2 minutes. The gold first melts and then it vaporizes. The gold turns into a gas. And then you cool it rapidly and it loses about half of its weight. The other half turns into a white powder. This is the philosopher's stone. And there are many names for it. The Egyptian, they called it, what is it? And it is represented in hieroglyphics as a very tall pyramid. Just like this, very tall pyramid. Really skinny and tall pyramid. Whenever you see that on the wall carved in, they're talking about the philosopher's stone, which they used a different name. They call it, what is it? Because they didn't know. The pharaohs didn't tell them. You see, this is what the old pharaohs, the pharaohs of old Egypt, they ate in order to live forever, because the old pharaohs never died. Now, another name for this is also Ormus, O-R-M-U-S. The old prospectors of the West here, the people that dug for gold everywhere, they called it fly ash because they didn't know what it was. And there was this white powder that you could hold your hand close to it and it jumped from the ground to your hand. So it was piezoelectric. And they found on Mount Sinai, on the Sinai Peninsula, that's where they made the white powder for the pharaohs that they ate, and they used it for other things. That's where they made it. And some years back, a couple of decades now, they were up on there was an old monastery up there. That was actually the remnants of it. And they found some chambers that was full of this powder. They didn't know what it was. They wondered. So one of the samples was sent to London, England for analysis. And they found that they had the signature of AU. That was the same signature as the substance they found in the large sarcophagus in the king's chamber of the large pyramid on the Giza plateau. That also was the powder that turned with had a signature of AU, which is gold. So it's a real thing. And there is another strange story, and that is, it seems to be connected to Saint Germain. He may have been at the Second Continental Congress in Philadelphia in 1776. We all know what happened in 1776. That's when America was created as a country. That's before they turned it into a corporation. Now in 1776, the meeting was falling apart. The founding fathers, they couldn't agree and they were afraid. They were afraid that the British Army, once they declared their independence, the British Army would come and kill them all. Then suddenly, a man appeared on the balcony behind them. He came out of the shadows and stood there and talked to them. He talked to them about courage. and freedom. And he told them, and this is in the original notes, he said, what you are about to do, you must do unanimously. Otherwise, you will fail. You will create a nation which will be the anchor for freedom for the world for all time to be. Then the man just stepped back into the shadows and vanished. It said that someone ran up the stairs up on the balcony and looked around, and there was nobody there. They looked in the rooms back there, and there was nobody there. So he vanished. After this, everybody of the founding fathers signed the document, the Declaration of Independence. It may have been him. There are many people that say it was. And it is not my research, but there are others that say they had read that Saint Germain claimed it was him. So we don't know, but it is curious. But here is a puzzle for you. On February 27, 1784, Saint Germain died. He was buried at a local cemetery in France. But that was in 1784. But in 1785, he surprised people by being alive again. In Anton Mesmer's diary, there is a section in there where he explained that he was meeting Saint Germain in 1785, 1 year after Saint Germain died. Also in 1896, that's about 100 years later, Madame Blavatsky in Russia made a public statement that Saint Germain had visited with her, and he told her that he was of an ancient immortal race living under the Himalayas. That could make sense. He also talked about history and events of history so detailed that nobody could really know all those details unless it was there. So maybe he was an immortal. Think about that. I told you earlier that I had a little bit of a story myself. That dates back to Omaha in about 1992, 3 or 4. I'm not sure which year it was. Where I was putting out a newsletter that became very popular. And here it is. It was called The Constitutional Liberator. And in there, I had articles about stuff that you wouldn't find anywhere else. I had a good subscription base here and a few overseas. And I really didn't promote that because postage was so expensive that I went in the hole actually on everything I sent overseas. But there were one day I got a call, and I remember that I was one of the first that I knew that got the call identifiers, the little box. Actually, it was a big box, and they had a little strip on there, so when somebody called, the phone number showed up. And I remember this particular thing. There was a whole row of numbers on there. I wondered, what in the world is that? And I took the phone, and there was this man on the phone with a slight French accent speaking in English. I recognized immediately he was French. And I know enough about languages, speaking several myself. I know that this was an educated Frenchman. It was kind of the higher end of the language, no slang or nothing. There was just pure educated French. But he spoke in English. I could hear there were one place in there, he said something in French, and I don't remember what it was. But he asked, "Who is this?" And I told him my name, and he said, "Oh, may I speak with Francis Tudor?" And that, it took me a little while to figure this one out, because I realized that in the Constitutional Liberator, some of the articles that I wrote in there, I did not want in my name. So I used a pen name, and that was Francis Tudor, which was one of the names that Saint Germain had used. And I realized after thinking about it for a few seconds that, oh, that's because of my pen name. So I said, this is 29, 30 years ago, and I'm not so sure of the exact wording of this, but it was something to the fact that Francis Tudor is not available right now. And then he seemed to ignore that. He said, "Where did you get that name from? No, where did you find, or where did you get that name from?" He was talking to me like I got the name. In other words, he thought it was me that wrote the article under Francis Tudor. So I figured he knew. Because Francis Tudor was used by Saint Germain. He's also said to be one of the founders of the Rosicrucian order. So he is dating back several hundred years. So if he was human, he would have been dead by now. So I asked his name, and he ignored me. And I remember asking him again. There were some more to the dialogue, but I asked him also one more time. I remember asking him 3 times for his name, and he ignored me all 3 times. Except for the last time I asked, he says, "Well, what is in a name for us, or for people like us anyway?" And then he hung up. It was a real mysterious call. And I know I got it because I used that pen name. To this day, I wonder, who was that guy over in France that called? Could it have been? Yeah, it could. Because I am convinced he have not died. He is walking around somewhere here. He may have gone back to the Himalayas and gone underneath for a while, but he will be back. And he has established himself on the surface world as a concept of integrity and amazement. I don't think he will let that go. And the thing about it is, he knew when the Second World War would start. he had access to future information, both when the war would start and when it would end. That could make him a time traveler. I've dealt with that for a long time. I know that's possible. Or he may have another source for information. We don't know. But he did know when that war started and when it ended before it happened. So now I've given you something to think about. So what about these people that channel Saint Germain? When somebody is channeling, they are getting information from, in most people's perception, outside of the physical, coming into the physical and into their mind. Can somebody that is still alive give information to someone that is channeling? That's something you could ask some of those people who's channeling Saint Germain. I don't know the answer, but it is a good question. Now, if Saint Germain was dead, I can perfectly well understand it. That is where it come from. But if he's alive, then what? It is just my analytical mind that gets to the surface here and try to question everything. I have done a lot of shows on my own here on Broadcast Team Alpha and the World Paranormal Show. There are subjects that I want to do something about. I get into it, I start researching it, and I find out this is bogus. And I throw it out. I can't do it. Even though it will be a phenomenal, interesting story. But there are some of them that I just can't do. But this one is very well verified. So I hope I gave you something good to think about. And if you like what you heard here, please subscribe and send it to your friends. Go ahead and put it on your Facebook page and send it to your friends so they can see it too, because there's stuff in here that some people may wonder about. And then, until next time, be good to each other.